Welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets and Independent Trading Group, we're very pleased you've joined us for the Blockchain and Digital Assets Conference. The next live presentation is from Universal Digital. Please note you can submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings through the Scheduled Meetings tab found on the conference platform. And now I'm very pleased to welcome Christian Kaczmarczyk, board member of Universal Digital, which trades on the CSE under the symbol LFG. Christian, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for everyone to hop on the call today. Really excited to be here with everyone that is a part of the virtual investor conferences. We're looking forward to talking more about what we're building here at Universal Digital. By way of introduction, my name is Christian Kaczmarczyk, and I'm a board member here on the team. My focus at the firm is helping with fundraising from both debt and equity investors, as well as thinking through the long-term strategy of the firm. And this means could be anything from how we leverage our assets on the balance sheets, building new revenue lines, which are accretive to the business, and then thinking through the variety of financial structures we can leverage to acquire as much Bitcoin as we possibly can. While also being a part of the team, I work as a principal investor for Third Prime. Third Prime is an early stage investment firm that focuses on fintech, industrial tech, and crypto. I currently lead all of our investment strategy in the crypto practice, where I have led investments into DeFi and stablecoin services and crypto infrastructure companies like Yellow Card, Edgevana, Chaos Labs, Helium, Nova Labs, amongst many others. And prior to Third Prime, I was a builder across companies like BlockFi, FalconX, and Bison Trails. At BlockFi, where I was one of the first 10 employees, and where I actually met Universal Digital CIO Chris Young, I helped launch a lot of our retail product offerings, which is like the Bitcoin credit card, crypto collateralized loans, as well as our savings accounts. And on top of that, I spent time building our institutional lending desk, onboarding traditional hedge funds as well as other financial institutions into the ecosystem. At FalconX, I led our sales and trading efforts, where I onboarded major financial institutions across fintech, traditional hedge funds, as well as some of the leading crypto investment firms in the space. And then at Bison Trails, which is akin to AWS for crypto, I led our business development efforts and ultimately helped get the firm acquired by Coinbase. Now, enough of me, let's get to Universal Digital. Universal Digital is a publicly listed company on the CSE, and our company is focused on acquiring and managing public companies across the APAC region to be Bitcoin-first acquisition vehicles. We've also recently launched a partnership with LongPoint. This partnership is to help us operate and market Universal Digital branded ETF products in Canada, specifically on the TSX. The company has co-developed these ETFs with LongPoint, and we will act as a promoter and brand partner for them. LongPoint will serve as the investment fund manager and portfolio manager for the ETFs, and we're going to be leveraging their extensive experience with ETF structuring, compliance, and operations. For example, some of the first two ETFs that we have launched are a 2x long exposure Coinbase vehicle, as well as a 2x long exposure MicroStrategy vehicle. But most importantly, our main focus here at the firm is to replicate MicroStrategy's model of leveraging a variety of financial instruments to acquire as much Bitcoin as you can. And the reason why we're going after Bitcoin, here at Universal Digital, we truly believe that Bitcoin is the next wave of digital capital. Most of the team members here have spent several years building companies as well as investing across the Bitcoin ecosystem. And while we obviously played a small part of that, but today that makes it the 7th largest asset globally. And we're fully in the belief that this will be one of the largest, if not the leading asset globally to date. And the most important reasons why we're choosing Bitcoin versus other assets is that it has a long-standing history as the leading digital asset, but has also been battle tested, right? It's been through several bear markets, bankruptcies, and near wipeouts of the industry. And the fun features of it being highly programmable, very portable, and incorruptible in nature makes it a once-in-a-lifetime asset to own. And while the industry has started to show some signs of life in other areas for these digital assets, None of those things would really be possible without the king that is Bitcoin. And then when you think about just generally geopolitically and also macro, you think of the situations where governments and central banks are today. There's going to be a clear need for a hedge against the fiscal, irresponsibility these institutions have put us in, and there's nothing better than an asset than in Bitcoin. And when you think about Bitcoin as a treasury asset, it is really the best one that there is. Outside of the fundamental layers that I've displayed, from a financial perspective, this asset has a Sharpe ratio of 1.51, making it the top global asset there. Given historical performance and future performance, has achieved over 200+% in CAGR. And on top of that, it's becoming less and less correlated to the S&P 500. So all that is to say, Bitcoin is one of the best assets that we could possibly choose and leverage for our Bitcoin acquisition strategy. And now you might be asking, why are we going to have something similar as MicroStrategy? Well, in short, it works. While it took a few years for the market to recognize the value and the mechanisms as to which MicroStrategy was performing at, it is done incredibly well. Since August of 2020, the stock has appreciated over 3,000+%. They've been able to acquire over 500,000 Bitcoin to date and have raised over $37 billion to continue to buy more and more Bitcoin. And this plan is not done yet. They actually plan to raise over $80+ billion through a variety of equity and debt instruments to be able to acquire more assets over the coming years. So there's a great opportunity to be a part of this tailwind, but then also have our own edge in the market. And this edge is really around being the leader in Asia, right? Today, Saylor really dominates in the US. But there's still a massive untapped opportunity to being the main player in the Asia market. When you think about the Asia market today, many of the 25,000+ listed companies across this region really lack growth, liquidity, and many narratives to think about where it's going to be. So think about where these companies are going to be. And despite the U.S. being the leader in a lot of crypto adoption as well as company production, Asia has become a hub of its own for retail adoption and for getting some of the early large institutional crypto trading funds. But despite all of this, there's a lot of the traditional financial institutions, corporates, and retirement funds that really lack the institutional access to Bitcoin. And this is very akin to what MicroStrategy dealt with when they first launched, and they recognize that opportunity. So our goal will be to find opportunities across Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, and several other Asia-focused countries. And the reason why we're choosing these in particular is because it's a pretty untapped market, right? When you think about Hong Kong in particular, going after that will be great because one, Hong Kong is one of the largest markets, stock markets in the world, but it'll be one of the few ways that we can actually access institutional Chinese capital through their Stock Connect program. And this will actually give us access to one of the largest capital markets in the world. And when you think about sizing of all these other markets, between China, Japan, Hong Kong, Korea, cumulatively, we're going to have over $25 trillion worth of market cap amongst all those regions. And so this gives us a major opportunity for us to capture some of these investment dollars into our vehicles. And like I mentioned, there is a big challenge in Asia today for accessing Bitcoin through an institutional manner. If you want to actually do this, it's quite difficult. Today, there are no Bitcoin ETFs listed anywhere in Asia. And while several countries and firms have applied for ETF approval, none of them have received it to date. So while the US continues to dominate on that front, we expect a fast follow over the coming years from Asia as they get their scenarios adjusted to. But you also think about, how are you going to be buying this stuff? How are you going to be custodying it? How are you going to be trading it? Outside of Hong Kong and Singapore, for most of these countries, it is quite difficult to get access to it from an institutional manner. And when you think about, historically, the US is still figuring out their sort of positioning, and the current administration making new rules. there's still plenty of regulatory uncertainty across many of these markets. You think about India, Korea, and Indonesia and Malaysia. There's still a lot of opportunity there for rules to be put in place, and gives a big regulatory arbitrage. And even if you are finding some way to get access or exposure through regulated brokers, you're going to be met with quite a wide spreads, right? Hashkey is one of the leading firms there that's providing access. They're charging anywhere from 1 to 1.8% to get access. And this is more than 10x in spread compared to the American counterparts like Coinbase or Kraken. And on top of this, there's no leveraged liquidity providers. There's close to no prime brokers. So getting institutional access will be very difficult to that front as well. And so our hopeful goal with Universal Digital is to be a very strategic vehicle for institutions to get exposure to Bitcoin. We offer a clean and regulated way to access the asset. We keep it very easy from not having to manage custody, not having to worry about wallets, having to onboard with OTCs and constantly have to negotiate spreads. You can just ideally go to your stock market region and be able to buy through there. But look, this will also give us the opportunity to be a proxy for people to access Bitcoin in these markets. And so, how are we going to be planning to pursue this model? We've actually spent a lot of time identifying a lot of underutilized public shells in each of these markets. And we typically have strong relationships, and we'll use those known relationships with the management teams to be able to have a smooth transition of ownership when we do acquire. We will then raise capital from LFG or Universal Digital, which is where our topco is. And then we will funnel those assets into the vehicle to then be able to purchase Bitcoin and then manage. And then Universal Digital will be managing those assets on behalf of that entity. In a more intricate view, Universal Digital will do these raises across equity and debt. This could be anything from convertible bonds, preferred stock issuances, and a variety of other methods. And then we will take that capital and then we will deploy it to acquire the shell itself, and then also use it to then funnel more and more assets amongst the subsidiary. And then over time, given that we'll have control and ownership of the subsidiaries, we'll be able to also, not only from the topco, but also from the subco, be able to have individualized raises, which will then allow us to be able to tap into those specific capital markets access points. And to give you kind of an example of who's already sort of done this in the region, today MetaPlanet is a singular vehicle. There's not a topco that owns into it. It is merely just a single vehicle in Japan. And ultimately, their strategy has proven to be very successful. When they first announced that they were going to be purchasing Bitcoin and putting it on a balance sheet and be Bitcoin first focused, even though they are an owner of a hotel in the country, their stock popped over 120%. And that was obviously just the first wave, and they did it over just a year ago. But today, that company trades over $1 billion market cap, and they continue to grow and acquire more and more Bitcoin. So given the success of that strategy, and we want to replicate that, but all across APAC. And the idea is that we'll have over 10 public companies by the end of 2026 or early to mid 2026. And the intent will be to acquire over 50,000 Bitcoin across all the vehicles. And the hope is to be able to also achieve the Nakamoto function that people are classifying, which is get to 1 billion Bitcoin on ownership. So you might be asking why us, and why are we so fit to go achieve this? Our team is actually predominantly located across Asia and has deep expertise in capital markets, crypto, as well as public market management experience. Our team members have actually taken several companies public across Asia. Some of these companies include Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And amongst the team, they have deep financial structuring experience and have closed large-scale private placements and convertible offerings. This allows us to optimize our deals to our investors, as well as to continue to scale from that. And then on top of that, we have deep and direct relationships with investment banks, brokers, institutional allocators across APAC, which gives us a deep and foundational edge into attracting capital markets dollars. Ultimately, this will all enable us to get accelerated access to public vehicles in each of these regions, and also maintain high credibility with regulators and exchange operators. Also, long-term, we'll be able to scale our origination and execution for future Bitcoin-focused vehicles. And to highlight some of the team member here, while we do have several other team members across Canada and North American markets, our team is highly predominantly focused in Asia. Our CEO today is Tim Chan. Tim has a deep career in traditional finance, spanning over 10 plus years, where he's traded equity derivatives and has built several startups across Asia. On top of that, he spent 12 years at BGC Partners, which Cantor Fitzgerald owns. And Cantor has actually been a part of several of these U.S. vehicles, which gives Tim a very invaluable edge to be able to interact with them and also have us interact with them to be able to acquire more assets to buy more Bitcoin. And like I actually mentioned before earlier, Chris Young, who I actually met my time at BlockFi, brings a deep institutional crypto market experience. So he will be leading he would be our chief investment officer. And at BlockFi, he was actually one of the first employees and also helped lead its Asian trading business scalement, which actually brought it over to a multi-billion-dollar portfolio. There, he also played a pivotal role in helping in the institutionalization of the digital asset space. He was actually one of the first people to ever trade Bitcoin EFP products in the CME. He was most recently at Hex Trust, which is an Asian-focused custodian, and I'll try to help provide prime brokerage services there. And on the CFO front, we've actually brought on Peter Rhodes. Peter has over 15 plus years experience as a CFO across a variety of industries, everything from aviation to cannabis, mining, and now digital assets. Across all those experiences, he's played a key role in raising over $400 million from those ventures and brings a deep expertise in financial strategy, corporate governance, and knows how to navigate complex regulatory landscapes. Like I mentioned, I can't highlight everyone here today, but the rest of our team and early investors bring deep investor relations, investment, and capital markets experience across Asia and the North American markets. This will all prove very valuable to us as we navigate several of these regions and go deeply into the nuanced but familiar markets. And to kind of finish off here, I want to reiterate our strategy for us. We're going to be the leading Bitcoin treasury acquisition vehicles for APAC. As we continue to acquire as much Bitcoin as we possibly can, alongside that, we'll continue to leverage our existing business line of our crypto ETP and ETF business with LongPoint to also develop a more diversified revenue stream alongside these acquisitions. This could be anything from acquiring or building various digital infrastructure companies like custodians, trading firms, on-ramps, as well as various other high margin and lean businesses that can help us, one, offset any future debt obligations from our raises, but then also help us continue to acquire more Bitcoin on our balance sheets. We actually also recently announced an acquisition of a firm called Bullwave, which is a trading and execution and data platform for institutional traders. And this will be a part of our suite of services that we offer outside of our Bitcoin acquisition. But look, thank you for the presentation here. I'll move over to Q&A and finish off from there. All right, great. And so the first question I'll go after, is LFG the primary vehicle to invest in Universal Digital? Yes, that is correct. LFG is the prime vehicle to invest in Universal Digital. We will use that mainly to start to be able to raise money, to then be able to acquire these shells. And then we'll also raise money from the vehicle to then be able to push the Bitcoin through the treasury there. So LFG will be an owner of several different vehicles, which will also leverage those individual vehicles to be able to raise capital markets dollars to buy more Bitcoin. So our Bitcoin per share from the LFG side will continue to grow, not just from our personal balance sheet that we'll raise from there, but then also through the subsidiaries that we have. Another question is, do you have any strategic investors or partners to support your rollout? Yes, we have already raised a small amount today of about 1.6 million, but we're also in active discussions with sort of the several key players in the markets who have actually been participating in several of these vehicles. We'll have more information in the coming timeframes, but the idea is that we only want to work with individuals who've been a part of these strategies and ideally are also long-term minded. We want to have good partners that are in the belief of, one, the strategy works, but then 2 are also very Bitcoin minded and focused. In terms of milestones to the end of the year, I mentioned that the goal would be to have 10 public vehicles across Asia, but we do recognize that that is going to be a big task. But at minimum, we're already actually looking at several different regions to date, with about 3 that we'll probably have over the coming months, and then by the end of 26, try to get to 10. And then can you speak to the investor channels and LP sources? Yes. So the investor channels are already sort of the existing players who have been investing into these vehicles across the US and Canada. And then when it comes to the specific APAC region, these are crypto natives, which have been in Bitcoin for quite some time. It'll be investment banks. And on top of that, there's also various marketing networks and groups of investors that we've been already tapping into. And then the last question that I have is, what differentiates Universal Digital from other blockchain infrastructure investment vehicles or crypto ETFs? I mean, the biggest portion is that today, when we think about the ETFs, they're highly focused, and the ETFs that we're launching, they're highly focused in Canada. And on top of that, we're not going to be trying to launch another Bitcoin ETF or another digital asset ETF. The idea is that we'll have, sort of specific crypto related ETFs that have some exposure of like, hey, there's several other crypto acquisition vehicles in Canada. Let's launch an ETF around that. There's also the one, like I mentioned, about, all right, if you want to go extra long on MicroStrategy. But the idea is that we want to offer differentiated products on the ETF front that it's a little bit harder to access because maybe someone doesn't have access to that in the Canadian markets. And then from the blockchain infrastructure fronts, we are actively looking at several companies that could be accretive to us in terms of, providing more asset management services, more trading services, and building this diversified revenue stream that isn't so cyclical to the underlying nature of the crypto ecosystem, right? We are fundamentally very long the industry and think that, at some point, everything will be on Bitcoin and blockchain rails, and we want to be able to service that. And long term, as we continue to buy more Bitcoin, we can leverage the Bitcoin on our balance sheets to then be able to take loans against that to be able to acquire other assets or use it to, be able to manage our debt case today. But the biggest idea is that, we're all in on the Bitcoin and crypto industry, and we want to make sure that we support the industry's growth from there. So not just being, a beneficiary of providing services, but then also making sure that the industry long term becomes the #1 industry in tech. Happy to take other questions right now. I know we have a few more minutes, but as of now, we have about 5 that have been answered, and happy to take any more. But if there isn't any, I want to thank everyone for their time, and happy to schedule more time with people individually, just because we want to make ourselves available to all of our potential investors, stock buyers, and all that. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, my email is ck@universaldigital.io. And we're happy to, like I mentioned, get teams on the call, answer highly specific questions. And if you're interested in participating in more of the specific convertible debt or equity deals, we'd love to have you be a part of that as well.